Hello, and welcome to Tampa Bay Community Network's Culture Ventures. I'm your guest host for today's show, Susana Weymouth, Executive Director of Tampa Bay Businesses for Culture and the Arts, or TBCN. Today we're going to start the show with a special segment. It's a video on our 2018 Impact Award honoree, Stanton store. It was prepared in collaboration with Chappell Roberts' Creative Director, Glenn Horn. We hope you enjoy it and find it interesting. A successful pharmaceutical oncology businessman and now sought-after consultant, Stanton Store has quietly been making tremendous contributions as one of the most impactful arts patrons in the Tampa Bay area. Over the last 2 decades, Store has channeled his professional and financial successes into an exemplary commitment in support of the arts.
Art became my passion. Interestingly enough, 1999, I remember that vividly. I was going to an annual art auction. It was a benefit auction, and the one piece that I fell in love with was a large-scale painting called Barking Dogs Signaled the End of the 20th Century. The artist was Theo Wujcik, but I became great friends with Theo. Over the course of time, we started traveling together. I invited him to Art Basel. We ran into a huge USF contingency, but between the art and between, the personal experiences, meeting people, he ran into Jim Rosenquist at that time, clearly Margaret Miller, who's director of Institute for Research and Arts with USF, Graphic Studio, Contemporary Art Museum. She's been pivotal to my involvement in the arts. I've got a really good friend who's very well connected in the art world, Jose Gelatz. And he has influenced some of my purchases in the past. Jose was the first one to introduce me to Graphic Studio.
Store's extensive art collection includes world-famous artists, many of whom Store met through their work with USF Graphic Studio. Store believes that making the opportunity to meet and interact with the artists helps to enrich his understanding of their body of work. One such example is Keith Edmeyer.
When I first met Keith, he was working on fireweed.
Store's interest in Edmeyer led to his commissioning a unique work inspired by the largest volcanic explosion in recorded history and by a story about Frankenstein's creator, Mary Shelley, keeping the heart of her drowned husband, the poet Percy Shelley. Edmeyer worked closely with USF Graphic Studio across campus disciplines to push the boundaries of this project.
The name of the sculpture is called The Year Without Summer. The summer of 1816 is known as the Year Without Summer. That is my favorite piece in the house.
Store passionately researches contemporary art, travels the world, and buys art that he loves.
So one of my favorite pieces in the house is by artist Teresita Fernandez. I ended up getting the first in the edition, and it literally is one of the most beautiful pieces in my home. This is the creation that I was introduced to when I was in London. That gets back to one of those experiences where getting to meet the artist and getting to learn more about the technique, the medium, being involved in it, that made a difference to me, and that's why I acquired Temple. I was fortunate enough financially to start a foundation. I think it was 2009. The first beneficiary from that foundation was USF. I think in part maybe there is a selfish reason for supporting these artists, and that might be that I'm hoping that these artists stay in the local Bay Area. And for the most part, they have and they do. The sculpture that's sitting on the table behind me, the artist is Chasity Williams. She was a recent Bachelor of Fine Arts student from USF. She just got accepted to a master's program. The recognition, not my recognition of them, but anybody's recognition, whether it's through art purchases, whether it's through providing a scholarship for these students, it helps build a connection between the artist, the collector, the gallery, the museum, and the local community.
STORE has established a high philanthropic bar by promoting quality and ensuring that artists and art institutions receive the recognition and support they deserve, and going on to develop long-lasting relationships in our community. His generous gifts have been transformative and discerning.
Not only do I just support museums, but I also look for specific exhibitions that are of interest to me that I can support.
STORE graciously credits other arts and cultural patrons throughout the Tampa Bay area who join him in helping to drive the arts economy and create a thriving environment for arts and culture.
So these are the people that have significantly influenced me, both from a collection standpoint as well as a philanthropic standpoint. Gail and Arnie Levine, as well as Doug and Maureen Cohn, obviously Margaret Miller at USF, and I'd say last and absolutely not least, the beautiful Lee and late husband Vic Levengood. If you truly want to become interested or are interested in the arts, then you need to immerse yourself in the arts. And through that, I think you become a better person. You certainly become a more informed person.
Stanton STORE embodies the best of generous giving and advocacy through support for arts education, encouraging students with scholarships, underwriting exhibitions, purchasing art, and commissioning works from emerging and established artists. It is STORE's deep passion for the arts that distinguishes him as a stellar example of modern-day arts and cultural patronage. And now, we have a special guest in the studio today, the honoree for Impact Awards, Stanton STORE. Welcome, Stanton.
Thank you, Susana.
So, Stanton, we've just seen a little bit in the video of how you embrace and are a patron of the arts, and also a little bit about your career and what led you to this point. Tell us how your career as a professional and a businessman and your success, which was tremendous, have influenced and gotten you to where you are today.
So I guess maybe I should start by saying, had it not been for a successful career in the oncology pharmaceutical arena, I would not have had the means to start a foundation to support the visual arts. And secondly, I wouldn't have the finances to support this crazy, although rewarding passion that I have, and that is collecting art. And I think it's my business experience that hopefully has made me a more savvy collector. And what I mean by that is, if I'm at the Gasparilla Art Festival, if I'm in New York, if I'm at Art Basel, today I'm more apt to do research on the artist if I'm unfamiliar with him or her. And so literally I will step out of a room, step out of a gallery, Google the artist, find out whether or not that artist has been collected in museums, if so, which ones. I'll also determine whether or not the artist has an advanced degree. Not that that necessarily makes a difference, but for me it does have some importance with regards to whether or not I acquire that piece, and it certainly has an impact on what value I perceive that work of art to be.
And yet you support established artists and emerging artists, and I know that you seek out the emerging artists. For instance, you have a good relationship with USF, Graphic Studio, Institute for Research and Art. In fact, you and I both serve on the advisory council there. So tell us what it is about young artists who are just starting their careers that also appeals to you.
So let me give you a couple of examples. Jason Pinkert is a recent MFA, Master of Fine Art graduate from the University of South Florida. Jason creates, and I guess originality is what I'm looking for, bottom line, but Jason creates these beautiful original artworks where literally he has swept dust and debris from the studio floor and then creates these beautiful large-scale images. There's another Master of Fine Art student, graduate from USF, Jake Troiley, and he paints these beautiful, again, large-scale paintings, and they're landscape pictorials that address today's societal challenges and conflicts. You know, an example that we just saw in the video is Chasity Williams and Heart Heat 1 and 2, the two bust sculptures. You know, seeing works like that, I get crazy excited, and I'm really fortunate to have had that opportunity to acquire those. And One other example is the TBCA award recipient, the high school award recipient for the Charlie Hunchel Art Scholarship Award for the Visual Arts. And that's Alanae May Noel, who is crazy talented, and I'm really looking forward to seeing her magic as she delivers and perfects her skills. So back to your original question, what do I look for? I look for originality.
And that's so important in the world of business and in the world of art. And thank you for bringing up Alanae May Noel. So Alanae was indeed the recipient of this year's TBCA Charlie Hunchel Art Stars Scholarship. The business community and individuals generously fund higher education in the arts. It goes to help defray tuition expenses. And Alanae is actually going to the Maryland Institute for the Creative Arts. It's the longest continuous degree granting program in the United States, which is very impressive for a young lady who has overcome a number of challenges, including some problems with her eyesight. So you have a very astute eye, Stanton. Clearly, Alanae is one to watch. Another one that I know that you have supported in terms of gallery shows and also catalogs is our TBCA 2019 Impact Award honoree for innovation in the arts, and that is Caleb Lindsay. Tell us a little bit about your experience in getting to know Caleb.
So I first met Caleb probably 5 years ago at the University of South Florida. He has an international following, but he is locally, homegrown. Crazy personality, crazy talented, and several years ago, after having met him, he was having an exhibition at Tempest Projects, which is a not-for-profit gallery located in Seminole Heights, Florida Avenue. And having known Caleb and knowing how generous he is to the art community, I felt that it was important for me to support his exhibition at Tempest Projects. So that was the first of two exhibitions that I supported of his. And the second exhibition of Caleb's that I wanted to support, it was kind of the perfect storm in that I had just acquired this photograph and artwork by the artist James Franco. And Caleb Lindsay and James Franco were doing this collaborative exhibition at the Bob Rauschenberg Gallery at the Florida State College. And this was, I believe, May, June of 2017. And it was a beautiful collaboration where Caleb used a lot of his soap opera personalities, to address family issues and culture issues. But Caleb, getting back to what I said earlier, is always so generous and creative, and I look at his work and you can't help but it puts a smile on your face.
It is totally unique, and he is, of course, you have a discerning eye. He's in the Met and MoMA, collected by the Rubel Collection, Studio Museum at Harlem, and he's won a number of major art prizes, including the Jerome Foundation, the Harpo Foundation, the Louis Comfort Tiffany Prize. He is really a superstar, recognized nationally and internationally, and deals with what you were saying before about these challenging subjects of gender and stereotypes and race in a very creative way. So it's interesting that you pick up on this theme that is so important to businesses these days. One of the reasons why business leaders, if you do a survey, they say that the creative skills are the #1 top soft skill that they're looking for. And many businesses are in fact hiring artists because of their critical thinking and creative skills. And so coming from the business world and having been so successful, is that something that you see as a bit of a crossover theme?
Absolutely. With regards to Caleb, I just wanted to add, you can go to an exhibition of Caleb's, and as you would imagine with any diverse crowd, or any art crowd, any opening, it's a very diverse crowd. However, there's a common thread, and that is everybody is having a great time, and everybody respects his art and creativity.
And that goes to speak to, you can be a serious, award-winning, internationally recognized, in museums, collected artist, and still be fun and enjoy yourself. And I know that you do in terms of the art that you surround yourself with. They become sort of your friends that you live with.
Sure.
And you have a number of special artists. Tell us a little bit, because I know that you went to Cuba some years ago and have collected a number of Cuban artists. And can you speak a little bit about some of your prized Cuban artists that are part of your collection?
Absolutely. So I do have an affection for Cuban artists, Italian as well. But Susana, I mean, one of the most important pieces or favorite pieces of my collection that I'm in the process of acquiring, I haven't actually taken delivery of it, is a sculpture by artist Asterio Segura. And he's doing this small edition patinaed bronze submarine with oars. And it's being created at Graphic Studio at the University of South Florida. Just a beautiful piece. And so I wanted something important by Asterio Segura, and so that was it. But in addition to that, you're right, I also do collect other artists. I've been to Cuba. Abell Barroso is one of my favorite artists. He does not just political, but I think some of his political works are some of my favorite, and that's one that I have in my home. And as well as Ibrahim Miranda, who did this large-scale print because raw materials are so difficult to get for artists on the island of Cuba. Ibrahim Miranda did this print celebrating Bacchus overlooking the island, and he printed this on the back of Cuban atlas maps. So I came across this when I was in Havana, and that was just something I had to have. Just very briefly, last year I acquired a print by Pedro Pablo Oliva, who had an exhibition at the University of Tampa. So yes, Cubans and Italians.
And you occasionally do lend and offer parts of your collection for exhibition. Is there anything coming up that you can share with us that's exciting on the horizon?
So, great question. We're in the planning stages, actually final planning stages. The University of Tampa is brave enough to host an exhibition of roughly 100 works of art in my collection. So Francesca Bacci, the curator, and Jocelyn Boyganzon, the museum director, they've accepted this challenge, and that has absolutely absorbed most of my life for the last several months. That exhibition opens Friday, August 30th at 7 p.m., so I hope you can make it. Yeah, as far as loaning works of art, I mean, I will share one quick story. When I first met Theo Wujik, a very good friend of mine, passed away, I think it was 2014. And Theo, when I acquired the first painting by him, he introduced himself that evening and said there are two people that are important in the world of art. One is, of course, the artist creating the work, but as important, if not more important, is the person who shares that work with others. And so that has always resonated with me, excuse me.
Well, you're incredibly generous, Stanton, as a patron of arts and culture, as a collector, and to share parts of your collection. We're very excited and hope that many people will join in seeing this very special opportunity to view a number of different artists, some of whom you've mentioned here today. Stanton, tell us also, you're very conscious of supporting enduring materials, catalogs for different exhibitions, galleries, museums. Why is that?
It's honestly not to see my name in print. It provides validation to the artists. As an example, Skyway, there was an exhibition 2 years ago. That was an exhibition for it was a juried exhibition, and it was for local talent. It was incredible, and it was participated by 3 different museums: the Tampa Museum of Art, St. Pete Museum of Fine Arts, as well as the Ringling College. And as an example, I mean, I've had many artists, and still today have artists that thank me for sponsoring that catalog, because it serves as an enduring material for them. It's something that the artist can keep for their CV or their file. And by the way, I promise I'm not boasting, but they just announced the 2020 Skyway exhibition. And I'm happy to say I jumped on board, so I'll be supporting that catalog once again in 2020. And the USF Contemporary Art Museum has also been added to the foray of museums.
Well, that's wonderful, Stanton. Thank you on behalf of the community, not just the arts community, but also the business community. These catalogs are a wealth of information. They tell you so much about the different artists that are participating, and especially now with 4 major museums that are going to be exhibiting simultaneously. So it's a great sign of collaboration across the different bays. As you say, it reaches all the way down to Sarasota and all the way up here near here to USF Contemporary Art Museum. And the cover of that catalog was Elizabeth Condon, if I'm not mistaken,
yes,
who is a great artist who is actually also partly from the USF and Tampa area, where she calls some of it her home. And Elizabeth works nationwide and internationally, and is also in Tampa International Airport. One of the public art pieces there is by Elizabeth. So when you're next at the airport, please look for that. So Stanton, if you had to say, I know you have many, many favorite pieces, and some of it, you spoke about some of them in the video that we just saw, Teresita Fernandez's piece, which is one of my very favorites. It's a very unusual piece. How do you make room in not just your life and your home, but in your heart for so many favored artists?
Great question. I rotate. I rotate a lot of art. There are certain walls in my home that are, I've got a piece of art there and it belongs there, such as Teresita Fernandez. It has not moved since I installed Teresita. There's another commissioned sculpture that I had by Dominique Labouvie, represented by Blue Acier. It was site-specific to that location. But I just rotate. I mean, I find something else I like, and it's not that I have lost interest in another particular piece, but I've got to see something new on occasion, and so that's kind of how I, refresh my home.
Stanton, you and I both serve on a number of advisory boards, you more than I do, and you've served for a very long time. So what is the importance that you see of these are volunteer, they take up quite a bit of your time? Why is that important that you serve in that way, and what do you think are some of the attributes that you in particular bring to some of these boards?
So as to why I serve on the boards, for selfish reasons, I want to keep my finger on the pulse. I mean, knowledge is power, right? So I want to know what exhibitions are coming down, a year or 2 years from now. But more importantly, I think that volunteerism is so important. The more you volunteer oneself, I think the more enriched your life is, the more value you bring to whatever organization you're volunteering with. I mean, could you imagine a museum without docents, or a theater without ushers? And so I think we all have talents, we have experience, and even if that talent is enthusiasm for a particular project, I mean, we all have something that we can bring to an advisory board. I'll give you a quick example. Literally earlier this week, I was attending a FMOPA, which is the acronym for the Florida Museum of Photographic Arts. And we were talking about the various classes that the professors teach. And these professors they're educated, they're professional, and they teach various classes at FMOPA. This one particular class that we were talking about taught photography to the underserved community of Tampa Bay. And then we also talked about the fact that resources are so limited. And so I asked the question, I said, has the museum, ever put the word out that they're looking for used cameras to help support this program? And the answer was no, but the idea was well received. So I'm not sharing that story to pat myself on the back. You had asked what attributes I bring to an advisory board. I'm sharing that story because if you have used cameras collecting dust like I do, please donate those to FMOPA. I'll give you one other quick example, and I'll make it quick. Going back 1 or 2 years ago, again, FMOPA, I guess I'm focused on that museum, but at FMOPA, we were talking about how difficult it is to get the visibility out there because there's so restricted signage on the building, or their signage is so restrictive. So again, I asked the question, is there any activity on the Riverwalk, which is literally a stone's throw, to expand, visibility of the museum. And so I'm happy to tell you that now there is literally, I don't want to say it's a beer cart, but there is a cart, a vendor cart, that promotes museum activities, photography competitions. I think they're even selling T-shirts and mugs. So I'm excited about that again. But don't look for it anytime soon, because they're going to bring it back after the summer months.
It's a little bit warm right now. And you were talking about FAMOPA. I know that you're involved with a number of different museums, the Tampa Museum of Art, USF Contemporary Art Museum, and also smaller galleries. And now I think that your interests are also, you're looking across the bay at some of the museums and artistic initiatives that are happening there as well.
Absolutely. So the secret's out. I will be moving to St. Pete in the near term. I'm sure my allegiance will shift somewhat, but I still plan on keeping Tampa my home. I have supported the St. Pete Museum of Fine Arts, on several occasions, and will continue to do so. But also scholarships, and the scholarships, there is no division between Tampa and St. Pete, not that there is with the arts, but I also think it's important to support scholarships, whether it's at USF or, I'm absolutely considering supporting scholarships with TBCN for the Charlie Hunchel Awards.
Thank you, Stanton. And arts education has seemed to be an important theme in terms of your generosity and your patronage. I know that you've very generously established two scholarships up at USF, one in the late Theo Wookchuk's name, and also the Stanton Store Embrace the Arts Foundation Scholarship for students who are pursuing higher education in the arts. So it must seem to me that it must be very important for you to see these artists, learn about the arts, learn about art history, come into contact with other artists, professors like Mernette Larson, whom we honored also TBCN last year, who taught at USF for over 30 years. There's just, these wonderful brain trusts here in the area. So thank you very much for your support for arts education.
Absolutely. I'll add to that. A lot of times we're asking ourselves, what can we do to make a difference? And I honestly believe that providing students with scholarships makes that difference. I've had several students come up to me and tell me that had it not been for receiving the scholarship, they would not have pursued their advanced degree in Tampa. They would not be living in Tampa. So I do know it makes a difference. And I share that story because we're all thinking, what can we do? And whether it's through a legacy program where you leave scholarships, via your will or via your estate planning, I absolutely encourage people to support scholarships whenever they can.
And here in Tampa Bay, now businesses are being increasingly attracted. We're a very fertile area for startups. You've got the Water Street and the Embark Collective and everything that Mr. Vinnick is getting going there, which is very admirable. And so we want to attract these artists and creative types and want them to come to school here and college here, universities, and stay here afterwards, not lose them to New York or LA or other places far away. So your scholarships certainly help that, and also the fact that you value arts education and therefore perhaps help them to see it as well.
Agreed, thank you.
I'm Susana Weymouth. I'm your host for Tampa Bay Community Network's Culture Ventures. We hope that you'll join us again next time.